Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we have a news post from War Thunder, and it's some more answers from the developers. They've gone and taken a bunch of questions and asked our boy Vyacheslav Bulanikov, or as you know him, BVVD, the War Thunder producer, and we have some stuff for basically all of the games. Some aviation stuff, some ground, some naval, some helicopters, and even a little miscellaneous section. Looks like there's a little bit for everyone, which is always positive. So, let's get into the aviation part first, see what's going on, see what they're talking about. The first question is, will Germany be getting its own Phantom variant soon, or the MiG-21 bis DDR? And the answer being, we plan to add a German F4 this year. More precisely about how soon, we cannot say. So the fact that they're looking at a German F4 this year and they're not sure when it's going to come is kind of interesting. That at least normally indicates to me that they're not looking to push, the higher BRs that much. I mean, like with new technology and stuff like that, maybe they're still looking to fill out that 9.7 to 10.7 area with different vehicles. But if you didn't know, the Germans did actually use certain F4s which we don't actually have in the game yet. They actually use the F4F, which is a lightened and simplified version of the F4E. They also upgraded their F4Fs with an ICE program in the 1980s, which went into the 1990s. ICE standing for Improved Combat Efficiency. I doubt we're going to get that version because it has a lot of stuff added onto it to make it really useful, and was actually used in service until 2012, which would be really far ahead of where we are when it comes to aviation at the time, that we're talking about this. The F4F makes a lot more sense when it comes to Germany, and also they use the RF4E, but that is a reconnaissance variant of the F4E, so I'm not sure that it would actually be that useful. It did have ground attack capabilities, so maybe, it gets in the game, but I think the F4F just makes more sense in general to be able to put in, kind of similar to how the British have like the FGR-1s and all of that. The Germans will get something similar. The next question is, can we expect to see the Sea Harriers, the FRS-1 and FA-2 for the Royal Navy aircraft branch in the future? Perhaps also the Indian Navy FRS-51 with Matra Magics? The answer is, so far, we can only say that Sea Harriers are in our plans. This is, once again, not a surprise. The Harriers obviously were quite a big success. The GR1 and the GR3 that were added, obviously the VTOL system seemed to work pretty well, so why not expand upon that idea? Also, recently, some Sea Harriers got passed to the developers, so maybe we see something like that. The main difference between them, of course, being the armaments that they were able to carry. Not too much else was that different, at least for those ones. I'm sure there will be slight differences in terms of radar and slight differences in terms of combat capabilities depending on which Harriers you look at, but generally seeing, more Harriers would be quite nice. If you haven't played the Harriers yet, either the GR1, the GR3, or the American variants, I would definitely say give them a go. They are a lot of fun flying around the place and trying out that VTOL idea. Hopefully the Ak-38 is not forgotten, and hopefully, people play that one as well, even if it is slightly lesser than its Harrier counterparts. The general idea, at least for me, is I think they are going to expand those areas now that they have the certain systems working. Whenever you have a new mechanic in the game, such as VTOL, normally you get a nice little taste of it at the start, and then it's pushed through hard. And my feeling is over this year, that's what will happen. The next question is, will we see swing-wing aircraft in War Thunder soon? The answer? Yes. So that normally means in the next few updates we'll see some kind of swing-wing aircraft. If you don't know what a swing-wing aircraft is, it's basically a aircraft which has variable swing wings. It's wings which are able in flight to be able to move from normally a horizontal position to more of an angle position behind the aircraft. This is useful because at certain speeds it is much better for flight characteristics to have the wings at a specific point while moving around the place. Now, a lot of people look at swing wings and they immediately go to stuff like the MiG-23 because that was passed to the developers and also talked quite a lot about, and they also go to the F-14 Tomcat, the Grumman, which is around the place. But I think generally, when I think about swing-wing aircraft, in terms of what's been happening in War Thunder recently, because if you haven't realized, in War Thunder they've been adding a lot of ground attack aircraft, a lot of CAS aircraft recently, not a ton of out-and-out sole fighters. They're looking for more multi-role machines, and even though stuff like the Tomcat can do multi-role stuff, I generally think we're going to see something different instead of just the Tomcat straight away. Something like the Su-17, the Sukhoi, would make a lot more sense to me, being the Fitter, which is its NATO reporting name. This is a kind of CAS aircraft or a fighter bomber. This would come after like the Su-7s that we have in the game, and after building up that line for the Soviets, one thing that they definitely need at higher tiers is some kind of CAS aircraft, which is at least equal or close to something like the Phantom and also the A4Es and the A4Bs that the Americans have been using recently. And I'm pretty sure something like this could definitely be that. If we want to go from the American perspective, because if you didn't realize, whenever a new mechanic gets added to the game, it's either given to America or shared with America. There's been a very small amount of times in the history of War Thunder where when a mechanic is added, it doesn't come to America first or America joint first. So we always have to look at what America could get. And of course, instead of the Tomcats, which I'm sure everybody wants, what about something like the Aardvark, the F-111? Once again, the fighter bomber, which at least the variants which they could add to the game. The other variants are a little bit skew with when it comes to how they would actually fit into the game, but something like the Aardvark would make at least sense to me in with the configuration talked about. So there's plenty of options when it comes to the variable swept wing stuff. They could definitely add in pretty much whatever they wanted. I'm sure in the coming updates, whether it be dev blogs, whether it be dev servers, or whether it be live, we'll see something which is similar to this, and I'm sure they'll probably, I mean, at least what I would do is I would do something similar to what we see from the Harriers, where you do a premium version and then a standard tech tree version. As long as they're similar or the same, I think that's generally a good idea, because, it just means that it can be profitable, and then at the same time, people can get access to the similar mechanics if they just grind out the tree. The next question is, currently, post-war British jets are still using World War II era bombs. Are there plans to revamp these loadouts for post-war bombs? And the answer is, we have quite a few reports about various historical inaccuracies. We are aware of this flaw and will definitely fix it on a first-come, first-served basis. So that's good. The British have actually had a bunch of revamps when it comes to their munitions over the years. Some of them when it comes to what belts that they use on the aircraft. Some of them, like last year, where they get new rockets, where they got many different rockets. And it was actually a really nice dev blog. It was really nice to go through, and I've actually used some of the rockets in the game now. And I'm sure as we go ahead in War Thunder's history, we will also get some new bombs when it comes to the British as well, and also other nations. So I think overall this is just kind of nice to see. The next question is, do you plan to add vapor clouds for modern aircraft when pulling high G loads? And the answer is, if you mean the Pran-to-Low artifact, it is already implemented in the game when approaching the sound barrier, but we plan to improve it visually and add this effect also when maneuvering under certain conditions. So they're gonna, improve it basically. It is already there if you haven't seen it. It looks really nice. And generally, I think when we look at the last year of War Thunder, we've had so many graphical enhancements to the game. Not just update new power, but, also the tracks, also the general contrast of the game has changed quite a lot. The general light lighting of the game changed quite a lot last year as well, and also the way that the clouds interface with everything. There's just a ton of stuff going on which looks really, really nice, and I think that'll continue when it comes to the future. I don't think they're gonna take the foot off the gas when it comes to graphical stuff, so that's really cool to see. The next part is about ground forces, and there are a few questions on ammunition, ground vehicles themselves, and also some extra, mechanics, I suppose, which could be added. So the first question is, are there any plans for more multi-purpose ammunition, like PLEL or FAPDS, for example? And the answer is there are no concrete plans. So the question requires some study, but we think such ammunition can be useful in the game. So pretty much, if you don't know what PELE is, PELE is the penetrator with enhanced lateral effect. It's a new type of automatic cannon ammunition without a fuse or explosive. The combination of two materials with different densities causes the shell to disintegrate in the target zone without the need for an explosive charge or a fuse. So it is a pretty interesting piece of ammunition. And then when it comes to the FAPDS, that is basically frangible armor-piercing discarding saber. So that is something where once the idea of a frangible bullet is that it's intended to disintegrate into tiny particles upon target impact to minimize their penetration of other objects. So I think generally when we look at these two pieces of ammunition, they do sound kind of interesting. Whether they will actually be useful in game or not, maybe in an AA capacity, I can definitely see that, because I'm guessing the idea is people will look at these pieces of ammunition and think they'll do more post-pen damage if they ever do penetrate anything. Even if their penetration is really small, they'll have a larger cone of effectiveness. And as we've seen over the last year or so, with additions of certain guns, such as the one on the A7D, the fact is they will be open to new ammunition types and also ammunition changes. So I'm pretty sure we'll get some more stuff like that. It'll be nice to see, but generally it'll also be worrying because sometimes it can be a little bit too effective when it comes to how it works. The next question is, can we expect to see the modern MBT for Japan in the coming updates to make Japan more competitive? The Japanese Type 90 tanks are quite effective at their BR. The recent BR changes may affect them and efficiency may decrease, but here we have an opportunity to raise the rate of fire. According to some sources, it may be higher than now. As for brand new tanks, we don't have many options for modern MBTs for Japan. In fact, only the Type 10 remains, which is even more of a mystery compared to other MBTs. Although we think with time it will appear in the game, although its defense characteristics will most likely be assumed, just like they are for all of the other top-tier MBTs. I love it how they've forgotten that little bit when it comes to this answer. But yeah, generally, when it comes to Type 10, a lot of people have been talking about it for a long time, talking about how Japan needs new top-tier MBTs. They could just keep putting in more variants of the Type 90. They could also put in the prototypes of the Type 90, the STC series. They could put in the TKXs, which are obviously the Type 10 prototypes. You could easily, if you wanted to, print 10 copy and paste vehicles at the top tier of Japan. And also, you could add in other nations' vehicles as well where you deem fit. So there is at least a little bit of expansion there for Japan. At the same time, I completely agree with them about the Type 90. The Type 90 is an incredibly combat-effective vehicle. As a person who has played a lot of 10.3, 10.7 over the last year, I've basically been spading a lot of the vehicles around there just to try and understand what people talk about when it comes to the meta of top tier, at least when it comes to the ground part of it. And I've got to say, the Type 90 was the funnest spading experience I had out of those vehicles. It has a very good reload, very good mobility, obviously variable suspension, which helps it a lot in a lot of situations. And the only thing it really lacks, especially now with the new ammunition that has been added to so many vehicles, is armor. Armor is not great on it, but it has the other two factors of, firepower and also mobility in spades. So if you haven't played the Type 90, I do highly recommend it. It is a very fun vehicle, and I don't think Japan needs anything more. Maybe they need an extra Type 90, like a Type 90C or something, with maybe some extra little plates on it somewhere. But overall, it's a fine tank. It works really well. And the Type 10, they are completely correct. It is a mystery of a vehicle. There isn't a lot of information about it. It's a highly classified vehicle, mainly because it literally just came out as a vehicle. But then again, the T-72B3 that we have in game, the armor package that is on it, is a 2016 armor package. So we know for a fact that they don't mind putting very modern MBTs in the game. I don't see why the Type 10 would be any different, especially I suppose the only thing that they're worried about is getting the characteristics wrong when it comes to the armor values and the ammunition values, but put it like this, it doesn't matter. Top tier is already a fantasy land already, why not add a bit more to it? The next question is, currently the commander view in modern tanks still reflects the binocular view of World War II era tanks. Is it possible that we have more realistic CITV in the future for modern tanks with commander cameras? And the answer is we are working in this direction. The result will be reported separately in the dev blogs. That'll be nice to see. BVVD did actually talk about this last sneak peek stream. He talked about the idea of there being different commander views, and I hope that stuff such as World War II vehicles don't get forgotten, but also at the same time, when you have machines like the PLSS, the STRV-122, where it has a specific commander point and commander view or commander optic, which is supposed to, be completely different from other machines, it would be nice to see that modeled in some way in the game. I don't think there needs to be individual models for each of the tanks. That would be way too much work, but a general idea for modern MBTs when it comes to how their binocular view would work, I think is pretty cool. So hopefully we see something soon, maybe in the next few months, maybe a little bit after. We'll have to see what they cook up over the next year or so. We have some naval questions also, which is great. The first one is, with the split between Blue Water Fleet and Coastal Fleets, is it possible we could see some nations receive an example of one tree but not the other? For example, where examples of smaller boats are harder to find, or the opposite, when one navy does not have lots of examples of larger warships. Oh, the way that question is worded hurts me internally. The answer is we think it is possible, but first we will try to add to the game fleets of those nations which have both fleet research trees. So at least they're starting from a point of view of adding, a blue water and coastal fleet for every nation. I think it would be fine now that they've split the tech trees, especially for specific nations, to make it so they have, only one of the tech trees, even if it means that, you can basically hype up that tech tree by itself. It means that you can spread the content out over many updates going forward. It may annoy a few people, a few purists who want as much content as possible, but at the same time, with the way that Naval is, and now with the two separate trees, I see it very similarly as to, having a new helicopter tech tree. Whatever is added is nice. Hopefully, it will be slightly competitive. It also makes, or at least reminds me of France, where France, at least in my opinion, after having a look at a lot of their vehicles and, going through all of their stuff, their coastal forces would have some very, very odd gaps in it when it comes to the general usefulness of it. The PT boat area, is definitely lacking compared to other nations that are already in game, and we'll have to see what goes on. But their blue water stuff should be pretty strong, which is why at least I advocate for France to see a blue water fleet pretty soon, and then maybe a coastal fleet later on, mixed with a few other nations. The next question is it possible we could see a naval or ship arcade assault mode similar to tanks and aircraft? This mode is particularly useful for stock vehicles and helpful for obtaining early modules. The answer is we haven't made any such plans yet, but we will think about it. Right. Now, this is an opportunity. Yes, I'm talking to you, all you naval players, 5% of the people who are probably watching this video. Hello, nice to see you. So, what is the opportunity, you may ask? The War Thunder CDK exists. It is something which is a wonderful tool, which means that you can create user missions through it. As you can see here, there are people who would like to see a naval/ship arcade assault mode. This is your calling. Go and make it, make it simply. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It just has to be as functional as the other PvE assault modes, and you may be able to put your stamp on the War Thunder game. You may be able to put something in the game that you can go, you know that? Yes, I did that. Go ahead, do it now, because nobody else is going to. So get it done. The other thing as well, when just talking about these stock vehicles, I still find it ridiculous that when it comes to naval vehicles, their parts and FPE haven't been reduced in price. Yes, that is correct. Looking at ground vehicles, we had this big fiasco about parts and FPE and how it's a real issue and how it needs to be solved for ground vehicles. Nobody cares for some reason about the naval ones. I seem to be the only person who's brought it up. So, could that be done maybe? That would be great. Thanks. Moving on to helicopters, we have a few questions. The first one, are there any plans to implement buddy lasering to helicopters with laser guidance, where a teammate can designate and lock a target for a compatible teammate vehicle? The answer is there are such thoughts, especially since technically it is quite simple to implement, but we need to think about the implementation and the meta. So they're thinking about doing it. I think generally it would be useful. I also don't think it would be used that much. Normally coordination like that in War Thunder isn't that easy to come by. I suppose if you're in a squad and you're working together with an ally who's in a helicopter, then it could work pretty well. But generally, at the same time, we already have the squadron marker in the game, so you can already just mark where they are. They can laser them themselves, and then Bob's your uncle, you're done. So I don't think it would be actually that much of an effect on the meta. So I would be fine to see it. I think it would be nice to see. The next question is, do you plan to add any helicopters for squadron vehicles? The answer, not in the coming updates of the squadron vehicles. So there you go. No helicopter squadron vehicles. You know what would be nice to see though? Maybe a event helicopter, We haven't had many. I think we've only had one actually, unfortunately. But yeah, it would be nice to see a event helicopter at some point. I would definitely be down. The next question is, some helicopters like the Lynx, Huey family, and Scout could have a door gunner on either side of the helicopter, here we go again, with a high caliber machine gun or Gatling gun. Is it possible we could ever see this configuration in game with player controlled and AI gunners the same way bombers have them? The answer is not excluded, especially since there were variants with guns in such units. For example, the French used up to MG151 20s. I am pretty sure this question has been asked before. I definitely remember reading something similar to this. Door gunners would be, I suppose, interesting. That's a lot of modeling for not a lot of use. I know a lot of people want to have door gunners so they can recreate their fantasies of Vietnam, but the general thing is, if you just look at it from a gameplay point of view, it really doesn't do a lot when we talk about in general. I suppose it would mean in those certain scenarios where nobody is looking to the skies and you don't have any AA, it would be easier for helicopters to come in and do more damage to ground vehicles, especially light ones. So maybe that's why people would want them. But in certain, in most times, 90%, 95% of the time, it's not really going to be that useful. And it's a lot of modeling work to be able to do it and have, that effect. Maybe the fact that they're bringing it up again in another Q&A means that they're looking to it, they're looking to do it in the future. That's the only thing I can really think of. And then we have quite a sizable miscellaneous section, which is always good to see. So the first question is, will it be possible to reorder crews, as in drag or slide existing crews left or right in a lineup for better rearrangement? And the answer is there are lots of technical features that prevent from doing it quickly and easily, so probably not. I have seen this sentiment quite a lot about the whole dragging crews thing. My general idea of it is if you organize correctly in the first place, then this isn't an issue. And also at the same time, is this really a problem for people? Do a lot of people have weird OCD about where their stuff is? I suppose for me, I always have my 3 ground vehicle lineup and then 2 aviation. But at the same time, it doesn't matter which side they are or which order they're in, as long as they work correctly. I don't think this is a huge issue. As I said, maybe people just have a weird tick about it when it comes to the game. The next question is, will it be possible to select a specific shell in each belt in the aircraft protection analysis system? Right now, you can simply fire the highest shell of any belt and not pick specific examples. The answer is yes. Such functionality for armor analysis is in the plans, as well as adding aviation threats to the armor analysis for ground vehicles. This is this is such a layup question, actually. This was actually talked about maybe about a month ago, how you weren't able to pick specific ammunition. It only went off the default one, so therefore it was very hard to test, specific ammunitions against vehicles. I would personally like not just the ability to select a specific shell, but also amount of shells in an area. So let's say instead of hitting 1 shell on the nose of a vehicle, maybe I hit 5. How much damage does 5 do compared to 1? I think that would be really nice to see, but the fact that they're putting this in is obviously good. More information is power, so we can go forward and, be able to test stuff and be able to understand what is going on. The next question is, do you plan remodeling obsolete aircraft models? For example, A6M series, which clearly shows polygons on the hood, for example. In addition, such work will allow you to add new models, A6M8, Model 54, and 0A67. The answer is yes, it is planned. Right. Don't worry about the weeb stuff. Leave the zeros. It doesn't matter about them. You know what does matter? That's right. My boy B-17. The B-17 looks like it was made in the 1980s. It needs to be remodeled. I am putting a war cry out. The B-17. Just go look at the B-17 in the game. Just go and have a look at it. It's one of the most iconic vehicles ever over the last 100 years. And it looks like it was made in the 90s. Somebody please remodel my boy, the B-17. And while you're at it, Mosquitoes would also like a remodel, and maybe a few more variants. That's my general thoughts. Don't worry about the A6, don't worry about that stuff. B-17. That's what we're on right now. The next question is, although aviation has a guided missile tag display, which will see warning systems similar to top helicopter ones, there are vehicles in-game which were equipped with such. F4 Phantom 2 and with AN/APR-26 warning system, for example. What? Wait, what is the question? Oh, will we see? Okay, never mind. The answer is top helicopter systems detecting missile launches in the optical spectrum by the flare of the starting engine. AN/APR-26 is a station for detecting the fact of the SAM launch at quite specific samples. For countering aviation missiles, such stations may be useless, but those radar stations that can give information to pilots about the change of operational mode on the enemy's fighters, onboard radar, and distinguish between search, track, and, for example, illumination modes will certainly appear in the game. Well, that's good. An expansion of radar systems is always lovely to see, and it looks like they're going to be doing that over this year, just like they have the last few. The next question is, it's been a long time since there was any news about World War Mode. Are there any works being done on it, and when we should expect the start of the new season? The answer is the work is ongoing. The mode will regularly receive new seasons with new features and content, so keep your eyes out for announcements. Well, that's good. That, at least to me, normally when they throw in this question, it normally means there's going to be announcements about something soon. It's just something that they've done a bunch of times. It's kind of like, as I said, like the layup question as well about the other thing, the specific shell thing. So I would expect some kind of news on it in the coming month when it comes to World War Mode. If it's anything like The Road to the West, I'm not playing it. It's as simple as that. That World War Mode was terrible in general, not just from the way it was planned. The mechanics were just completely busted in it when it came to how the helicopters worked and also the unit reinforcements. The fact that there is still no way of being able to practice in a mode like that is ridiculous. And then at the same time as well, you have all of this going on, plus the fact that you had a 2-week period to let people know that they need top-tier vehicles from 3 separate nations, not just air, but also ground. All of that is just completely screwed. So if they do anything like that again, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not interested. I'll just play the single player stuff, so I don't have to worry about anything else, and that will be that, unfortunately. I don't want to put, at least from my point of view, the squadron through that again, expecting people to do stuff that, they don't want to do or unwilling to do or not interested in doing. That is not what any of this stuff should be about. So, therefore, at least from my point of view, it won't be done. We'll see what the news is going forward. But yeah, a pretty good Q&A overall. A lot of good questions answered, a lot of good layup questions, a lot of information on what we're going to see in the future. Overall, very happy with the return of this Q&A. It's always nice to see these Q&As, especially after we missed out on our Kirill last year. There was no Kirill Yudintsev interview. Hopefully we get one of them this year, or hopefully we get something similar this year. Would always be nice to see stuff like that. But overall, I am impressed. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Hosest Kishol, Hans, Bareen, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.